The girl in the trash, she was small, thin, and shaking. Her body was covered in dirt. Her hair was a tangled mess. Her skin looked gray under the sun. She stood beside a tall garbage bin behind a market full of shouting voices and smells. No one looked at her with kindness. People passed by with their hands covering their noses. Some whispered rude things. One child pointed and laughed. But she didn't care. She was hungry. More hungry than anyone could understand. Her name was Rin, but no one in this city knew that. She had not spoken her name in months. She had no home, no money, and no family. Her only friends were the broken pieces of food she could find in the trash. She reached into the bin with shaking hands and pulled out a piece of old bread. It was wet and half molded. She sniffed it, then took a bite. Her stomach ached, but she forced herself to chew. Her eyes were empty. Her heart had forgotten how to hope. A group of market sellers saw her and shouted at her to leave. One threw a rock near her feet. Another kicked the trash bin and called her an animal. She didn't reply. She just stepped back, clutching the bread like it was gold. She moved toward the next alley, where more trash was thrown every night. The sun was setting, and the streets grew colder. She knew the city would soon turn dangerous. But the hunger in her belly was louder than her. Feared out in the crowd, one man stood silently. He didn't shout. He didn't look away. His name was Jake. He was a human mechanic who had come to the city to fix a broken transport engine. He carried a heavy bag of tools, but when he saw the girl, he stopped walking. There was something in her eyes, not just pain, not just fear, but something deeper, something lost. He watched her step into the next pile of garbage and bend down to search again. Jake didn't understand why no one helped her. She looked no older than 17. Her clothes were torn and didn't fit. Her arms were covered in bruises. She wasn't dangerous. She looked like she had already lost everything. He reached into his coat and pulled out the small sandwich he had saved for later. He took a step toward her and spoke gently. "Hey, are you hungry?" Rin froze. Her eyes snapped up, wide with alarm. She stepped back quickly, hitting the wall behind her. No one had spoken kindly to her in a long time. She looked at Jake's face, expecting him to laugh or trick her. But his voice didn't carry any hate. He just held the sandwich in his hand and waited. She didn't speak. Her mouth was too dry. Her legs were weak. She looked down at the bread in her hand, then at the fresh sandwich he was offering. She didn't trust it. Many people had tried to trick her before. Some would offer food, then kick her. Others would give her scraps, then chase her like a dog. But this man just stood there, still waiting. After a long moment, she reached forward and took the sandwich slowly. She didn't say thank you. She didn't smile. She just held it tightly and took a small bite. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. She hadn't tasted fresh food in weeks. The flavors hit her hard. She turned and ran before he could say anything else. Jake stood still, confused. He didn't chase her. He watched her disappear into the shadows. Something didn't feel right. This wasn't just a poor girl. She looked different. Not just in her features, though her skin had a strange shimmer under the light, but in the way she moved, the way she looked around like she was always being hunted. That night, Rin found a corner behind a broken wall to sleep. Her body felt warmer after the sandwich. Her mind was slower, calmer, but her heart was still heavy. She thought about the man who gave her food. Why did he do that? What did he want? No one gave anything for free in this city. Her eyes began to close, but before sleep came, her body collapsed completely. The next morning, Jake found her lying there, cold and still. He had searched the alleys after work. Something in his chest told him to look for her. And when he saw her, half unconscious and barely breathing, he dropped his tool bag and rushed to her side. He picked her up carefully. She didn't resist. Her body was light, too light. He felt every rib through her clothes. She looked like someone who had been thrown away. But Jake didn't see garbage. He saw a life that still mattered. He whispered softly, more to himself than to her, "Come with me." And this time, she didn't run. Her silence wasn't empty. When Rin opened her eyes, the light above her was soft and golden. She was lying on something warm, not the cold ground she was used to. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Her body didn't hurt as much. There was a strange smell in the air, clean, like metal and soap. Slowly, she sat up and looked around. She was in a small room. The walls were metal, but not harsh. A folded blanket was over her legs. A cup of water sat nearby. She panicked. Her fingers gripped the edge of the couch. Where was she? Who brought her here? Her eyes darted across the room until they stopped at a man sitting near the wall, fixing a small machine. It was the same human who gave her food. Jake. He noticed her movement and looked up. He didn't get close. He didn't speak right away. He just gave a small nod and said softly, "You passed out. I didn't want to leave you there." Rin didn't reply. She stared at him, her hands ready to run, but her body didn't move. She was too tired. Her stomach hurt, and her feet were bandaged. Jake noticed her eyes on the bandages. They were bleeding, he explained. "I just cleaned them a little." Still, Rin said nothing. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She wasn't sure if she could trust him. Too many times she had trusted people and was hurt for it. But Jake didn't ask questions. He returned to fixing the machine, giving her space. Time passed slowly. Rin didn't speak the first day or the second. Jake gave her food without pushing her. He left clothes for her on a chair. Every time she took something, he noticed how careful she was, like she thought he might hit her for it. On the third day, Rin stood in front of the mirror in the small washroom. She had finally bathed. The warm water was strange, like a gift. From another world, she looked at herself for a long time. Her face was thinner than she remembered. Her eyes looked older. On her left shoulder, she saw it again, that mark. Burned into her skin long ago. A number. A brand. A reminder. She stared at it until her chest felt tight. That mark had taken everything from her. It had told the galaxy she was not a person, just something to be used and sold. When she returned to the small room, Jake looked up from his workbench. His hands were dirty with grease. He didn't speak. He just watched her quietly. She looked at him for a moment, then lowered her head. "Why?" she whispered. Jake blinked. "Why what? Why help me?" Her voice was dry and cracked. It sounded like it hadn't been used in months. Jake didn't answer right away. He set down his tool and sat back. "I saw someone who needed help. That's all," he said. "People don't help garbage," she replied quietly. "You're not garbage." Rin looked at him. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't want to show. She turned her back to him, but the words had already hit her heart. That night, she didn't sleep in the corner. She slept on the couch, under the blanket. It was the first warm night she had felt in a long time. The silence in her chest started to change. Not fully, not yet. But something was waking up inside her. In the days that followed, she spoke more. Just small words at first. Yes, no, thank you. But Jake never asked too much. He talked about his life, simple things, how he built machines, how he used to fly across the outer colonies fixing engines. Rin listened quietly. She didn't know why his stories made her feel safe. Maybe it was the calm in his voice, or the way he never looked at her like she was broken. One morning, Jake found her trying to help clean his tools. She didn't say anything, but her hands moved carefully, remembering old skills. He watched in silence, then handed her a cloth. "You've done this before?" he asked, Rin gave a tiny nod. My father. Fixed ships, she said. Her voice was steadier now. Jake smiled. Must have taught you well. But something in her eyes changed at the word father. She went quiet again. He didn't ask more. He just continued working beside her, letting her speak if she wanted. Later that night, while Jake was out getting supplies, Rin walked around the room and looked at the small photos on the shelf. Pictures of ships, planets, and one of a smiling woman holding a child. She touched the frame gently. She missed her own mother, her real home, her people. But they were all gone now, or so she thought. Behind her, a small beep came from Jake's communication pad. It flashed red. She picked it up slowly. Her eyes scanned the message. Subject confirmed alive. Proceed with retrieval. No damage allowed. DN a sample required. Rin froze. They were looking for her, and they had just found her. Asterisk A. Scarred past Rin sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the wall as Jake worked quietly nearby. Her hands rested in her lap, trembling slightly. She had read the message. She knew what it meant. They were still hunting her. No matter how far she ran, no matter how deep she hid, the past always came crawling back. Her breath was slow and heavy, but she said nothing. She couldn't. Not yet. Jake noticed her silence was different today. It wasn't the quiet of fear. It was the quiet of remembering, of pain building up. He didn't ask, but she spoke anyway. I was taken when I was 6. The words were soft but clear. Jake stopped what he was doing. He didn't look at her. He knew if he did, she might stop. So he just listened. They came in the night, loud engines, fires everywhere. My village tried to hide, but it was no use. The ships had lights so bright, we couldn't even see where to run. I held my mother's hand. Then I didn't. Rin's voice cracked, but she kept going. I woke up in a cage with others. Some my age, some younger. They called us stock. Not children. Not people. Just stock. They put us in chains. They burned a number into our skin. She touched her shoulder lightly. That number told them we had no name anymore. Jake turned his face away. His jaw tightened. He felt angry but didn't want to show it. He wanted her to speak freely. They sold me to a family on a cold moon. I cleaned floors, washed clothes, didn't speak unless told to. If I made a mistake, I didn't eat. If I cried, I was punished. They said I should be grateful, that I was given a job, a home. She laughed bitterly. They lied. I wasn't a worker. I was a pet, a slave with pretty eyes who followed orders. Jake looked down. He couldn't imagine living like that. And yet, Rin was sitting right here alive. That was its own kind of strength. One day, I escaped, she said. I crawled out of a waste chute, cut my feet on broken glass. I ran through the sewers, hid in dark places, changed my name, found a ship going to another colony. They didn't check who I was. I stowed away. That's how I ended up here. She paused and then added in a whisper, I thought I was finally free. Jake finally spoke. You are. Rin looked at him with tired eyes. No, I'm not. Someone sent a message. I saw it on your screen. They found me. Jake stood up and walked over. Let them come, he said. They won't take you again. Her heart jumped. No one had ever said that to her before, not even in a dream. People always said, hide or run. But Jake said, let them come. Like he believed she was worth fighting for. She didn't know how to respond. So she asked the only thing her heart could say, why are they looking for me? Jake didn't know. But he had a guess. That message had words like sample, confirm, and no damage allowed. It didn't sound like someone chasing a slave. It sounded like someone chasing something important. Or someone. Later that night, while Rin was resting, Jake accessed an old data core. He had once worked with tech salvagers who knew how to dig up buried files. He typed in Rin's old ID number burned into her shoulder. The results shocked him. Rin was listed as a high-priority subject. Not just a runaway. Not just a slave. But something more. Subject. RYN 4829, former heir of Calferin. Genetic class. Alpha line. Biological signature locked. High clearance required. He stared at the words. She wasn't just a lost girl. She was royalty. His hands trembled. He looked over at her. She was sleeping on the couch, curled up like a child. She had no idea who she really was. The next morning, Rin woke up to find Jake sitting beside her, holding a data pad. His face looked serious but not afraid. "Rin," he said, "I found something. You deserve to know." She took the pad and read the words slowly. Her eyes widened. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. "No," she whispered. "This isn't." "True. It is," Jake said gently. "You were never trash. Never worthless. They knew who you were. That's why they kept you small, broken, forgotten." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "My people? They thought I was dead. Maybe some of them are still out there," Jake said. "Maybe it's time you find them." Rin held the pad close to her chest. For the first time in years, she felt something inside her shift. Not fear, not hunger, but purpose. She was more than a scarred past. She was the future they had tried to erase. Asterisk. The hunters arrived. The sky above the city looked the same, but something in the air had changed. The wind felt sharper. The streets, once noisy and careless, had grown quieter in certain corners. Jake noticed at first small signs that didn't belong. A parked vehicle that never moved. Faces watching too long. Shadows that lingered where they shouldn't. And Rin? She felt it in her bones. She stood near the small window, eyes scanning the street. Her heart beat faster without reason. It was the same feeling she used to get when a master was about to punish her, cold, heavy, and certain. Someone was coming. Someone who knew who she was. Jake had been preparing for this ever since he saw the file. He strengthened the locks, turned off outside networks, buried the signal pad deep under metal. But he knew it wouldn't be enough forever. Whoever wanted Rin didn't care about rules. They had resources. And now they were close. That night, a soft knock came at the door. Jake froze. Rin's hands clenched. It was too calm, too careful. Jake walked to the door and peered through the side lens. A man in clean clothes stood there, tall, pale eyes. No dust on his boots. Definitely not a local. Jake didn't open the door. "Go away," he said through the lock. The man smiled. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." Jake didn't answer. "She's marked," the man continued. "And that mark makes her ours." Rin heard every word. Her legs trembled, but she didn't run. She had run her whole life. She was tired of running. Jake replied firmly. "She doesn't belong to anyone." A long silence followed. Then the man's voice turned cold. "Then you'll both disappear." The sound of metal sliding from a holster filled the air. But Jake was ready. A sudden shock wave burst from the side wall, one of his homemade traps. The stranger stumbled back, weapon flying from his hand. In a flash, Jake pulled Rin behind him and ran out the hidden door in the back. They didn't stop running until they reached the edge of the old rail tunnels. Jake led her into the deep dark. His fingers gripped hers tightly. Behind them, distant footsteps echoed. The hunters weren't just one man. There were more. And they wouldn't stop until they had her. Inside the tunnel, Jake activated an old power box. Lights flickered on. Dust fell from the ceiling. He turned to Rin, breathing hard. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. Her face was pale, but her eyes had a strange fire in them. Who were they? She asked. Jake shook his head. Not soldiers. Not police. Too quiet. Too trained. Probably private agents. For what? For keeping secrets, he said. And you're a secret they want buried. Rin sat on a crate and hugged herself. The past was back, and this time it had a face. She remembered the man. He was there the day she was taken from her family. He hadn't aged much. That wasn't normal. Maybe he wasn't just a man. She looked at Jake. They'll keep coming. Won't they? Yes. Then I can't stay here. Jake paused. Where will you go? She thought for a moment, then whispered, Back. He frowned. Back where? To the start. My mother. Before they took me, she hid something. I think it's still there. A star map. Coordinates. Maybe others survived. Maybe they're waiting. Jake looked at her like she had changed, and she had. She was no longer the girl picking through trash. She was standing tall now. Her voice was steady. The fire in her blood was returning. They called me property, she said, but I was born a daughter, a leader. Jake gave a slow nod, then let's get you home. Before they left the tunnel, Rin pulled something from her pocket. A small metal tag she had worn since she was a child. It had a broken edge and burn marks, but the symbols were still there. She showed it to Jake. This is proof, she said. This was my house name. Jake scanned it and uploaded the symbol into his system. The match came back Caltheran crest. Forgotten, destroyed, erased from galactic records. But not lost. The girl who once searched through garbage had just found a reason to rise. And those who hunted her would soon learn. They weren't chasing a runaway. They were chasing a spark, one that was about to start a fire. Asterisk. Run or fight, the old ship groaned. As it lifted off the hidden landing pad, dust spinning beneath its worn-out thrusters. Jake's hands gripped the control panel, eyes sharp, heart racing. Beside him sat Rin, her hair pulled back, her face calm but determined. They weren't running anymore. They were moving with purpose. Rin had made her choice. She would stop hiding. For so long, she had been taught to survive by staying small, quiet, invisible. But now, she remembered who she was before the chains. She remembered her mother's voice telling her stories of their people. The House of Caltheran was once a proud bloodline, leaders, scientists, warriors. Now, most of them were gone. Burned from history. But Rin had a piece of it left. A location buried deep in her memory and confirmed by her old family tag lead. To a dead moon on the outer rim. No one went there anymore. But that's where she believed the truth waited. Jake didn't question her choice. He just prepared for the journey. He built a new cum shield. He changed the ship's ID. He taught Rin how to handle basic defense controls. And every day, she learned faster than before. Her hands remembered the work. Her eyes stayed focused. She was becoming something more. Herself. As they entered deep space, Rin sat in silence, watching stars pass by. Her mind played out every step of what would come. The people who hunted her wouldn't stop, not just because of who she was, but because of what her blood carried. Hidden deep within her DNA was something more than identity. It was technology, a code, a key. Only those from her bloodline could unlock it, and those who had enslaved her wanted that key. They reached the dead moon on the third day. The surface was cracked and frozen, but Jake managed to land the ship near an old outpost buried under ice. Rin stepped out slowly. Her boots crunched the ground. The place was quiet, no signals, no movement, no lights. But as she walked toward the dark stone door, something inside it responded. A faint glow appeared under the ice. She stepped forward and placed her hand on it. It opened. Inside the old base, lights flickered back to life. Ancient tech blinked. Walls hummed. A voice, faded but still working, spoke in an old language one only Rin understood. Jake stared, speechless. This wasn't just an outpost, it was a vault. The place held data, history, and names. Dozens of names, her family, her people, their locations during the war. Some were marked as dead, but others were still marked unknown. Rin's breath caught. There might be survivors, she whispered. Jake looked at the data. Then we find them. But before they could plan their next move, a warning alarm blared through the system. They found U.S., Jake said, checking the sensors. A cruiser was approaching. No warning, no identification. It was the same type used by private bounty forces. Jake prepared to lift off. But Rin stepped away from the controls. No, she said. Jake looked at her. Rin, we don't have the firepower. We don't need to destroy them, she said. Just stop them, Jake frowned. How? Rin walked to the old vault system. Her fingers moved across the panel. She was unlocking something. I remember this room, she said. My mother once brought me here as a child. There's a defense system buried under the moon. She activated it. Outside, old turrets hidden beneath ice rose up. Shield generators blinked on. The cruiser stopped just beyond the range. Not expecting any resistance, a message came through. Rin of Caltherin, surrender now. You will not be harmed. She looked at the speaker. You harm me every day you erased my name, she answered. Then she shut the signal. The ship backed away but didn't leave. They would wait, maybe call for more, maybe send drones. It didn't matter, because now Rin wasn't alone. She had a partner. She had a vault, and she had the truth. Jake stood beside her. We'll fight if we must, she nodded. But not just for me, for the others. He smiled. Let's give them something to fear. Outside, the stars watched silently. The girl who once rummaged through trash now stood behind the shield of her ancestors. No longer a victim, she was ready. Not to run, but to lead. Asterisk, the worthless girl who led a revolution once, they had called her garbage. Once they had looked at her with pity, disgust, or hunger in their eyes. Once they had burned her name, her family, her story from the stars. But now, across hidden corners of the galaxy, that forgotten name was being whispered again. Caltherin, the ancient bloodline thought to be lost, was alive. And its last heir was rising. Rin stood at the center of the moon's vault, facing a group of strangers who had just arrived in answer to her signal. They came from slums, labor camps, cargo ships, places where the broken hid. Survivors, escaped slaves, children who had once played under the banners of her fallen house. And now they looked at her with wide eyes, waiting, hoping. She didn't speak like a queen. She didn't wear armor. She wore patched clothes, rough boots, and the hard look of someone who had been thrown away and climbed back. But her voice steady, clear, full of fire, lit something inside them. We were forgotten, she said, but we never stopped existing. They wanted us scattered, silent, scared. I was scared once. I was hungry once. I was nothing. But now I remember who I am. I remember who we were. And I refuse to let them erase us again. Jake stood behind her, watching the crowd shift. He saw it in their faces, the change. She wasn't just another lost girl. She was the leader they didn't know they were waiting for. The data vault helped them more than expected. It held names, locations, hidden funds, and tech designs long thought destroyed. Among them was a prototype, an old stealth cruiser buried beneath the moon's crust. Jake and the other mechanics spent days repairing it while Rin trained others on security systems, command protocols, and communications. Rin wasn't trained in war, but she was trained in pain, and pain had taught her how to survive, how to adapt, and how to lead. Her orders were never shouted. They were spoken like an invitation. And people followed not out of fear but out of belief. News began to spread quietly across underground networks. A girl with the mark of Caltheron had returned. Not a rumor, not a ghost. A living symbol of resistance. Those who had suffered under the Empire's silent chains began to stir. Traders offered supplies. Old rebels offered contacts. A few alien families even offered their own children to join her growing cause. Jake warned her, "The more noise we make, the faster they'll come." Rin nodded. "Good, let them come. This time we're not alone." One night, a small team returned with terrible news. One of the refugee colonies, one of the names from the vault had been wiped out, burned from orbit. The Empire had found them first. Rin stared at the report, her jaw clenched. "This is what happens when we hide too long," she said. Jake touched her arm gently. "This isn't your fault." "No," she replied. "But stopping it is my responsibility. They couldn't save everyone, not yet. But they could fight." So they set their next target, a slave processing hub on the nearby planet Virex. It was where children were sent after capture. Rin remembered it well. She had passed through its gates once. Now she would return not as cargo, but as fire. With only one ship and a handful of fighters, they had little chance. But Rin wasn't planning to win through force. She planned to win through hope. They arrived at Virex in silence, using the stealth systems Jake had rebuilt. They hacked the hub's internal comms and broadcast Rin's face across every screen. The same face that once cried behind a cage now stared into cameras with steel in her voice. "This is Rin of Caltheron. I was once dragged through your gates, in chains, but I survived. And now I return not to beg, but to free those you thought would stay silent. You can run, or you can try to stop us. Either way, your time is up." Guards panicked. Sirens rang. But inside the building, the prisoners heard her voice. And for the first time in years, they felt something strange. They felt hope. The prisoners rebelled from within as Jake's crew stormed the gates. It was chaos, but the kind that ended in freedom. The hub fell. Files were stolen. Children rescued. The Empire was humiliated. And at the heart of it all stood the girl they once threw away. Rin didn't celebrate. She stood outside the hub in the moonlight, watching the sky. "This is only the beginning," she said. Jake stood beside her. "You were supposed to be forgotten." She turned to him, eyes fierce. "Then let them remember me forever. Come with me." Again, the galaxy would never forget the name Caltheron again. What started with one broken girl and a pile of trash had become something far greater, a movement, a flame spreading across stars that were once silent. Rin, once cast aside and left to starve, now stood at the front of a growing resistance. The slave hub on Virex had fallen. More were following. And across dozens of systems, the abused and forgotten began to rise not with weapons alone, but with belief. Because if she could rise, so could they. But Rin knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The enemy finally showed their true face. Not just hunters, not just private forces, but a shadow group hidden deep inside the Empire, those who profited from silence and slavery. They called themselves the Order of Sovereigns, and they had ruled from behind curtains for centuries. Now, they wanted Rin erased permanently. Her final battle was coming. Not just for herself, not for revenge, but for every child still locked behind steel doors. For every voice still too scared to speak. For every future still in chains. The target was clear. A communication station in deep space used by the Keektis used by the Teen Chains. The target was clear. A communication station in deep space used by the Tifin within Stemenfeep space used by the Chichurai still in chains. The target was clear. a key-10 communication station in deep space used in order to track and move captured beings. It was guarded, massive, and nearly impossible to breach, but Rin didn't hesitate. She stood before her people, once scattered, now united. Humans, aliens, hybrids, former slaves, rebel engineers, and old war pilots. They had come together because of one girl. Not a queen dressed in gold, but a survivor who had built her throne from broken pieces. She spoke plainly, just as she always did. I was once nothing. I was once scared, weak and dirty. They made me believe I had no worth, but now I see the truth. My worth was never theirs to decide, and neither is yours. So we take this last step, not because we're sure we'll win, but because it's the right thing to do. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't need to. They followed her into the dark because they had already seen her light. The plan was risky. Jake's team hacked the outer shields while Rin and her core team used stealth pods to board the station. Once inside, everything fell into chaos. The Order wasn't prepared for fighters who had nothing left to lose. Doors fell. Weapons jammed. And in the center control room, Rin came face to face with the one who had ordered her taken as a child. He was old now, rich, dressed in polished black armor. Still calm, still smug. You're just a girl who got lucky, he said. Without him, he nodded toward Jake, you would have died in a gutter. Rin stepped forward. No, I would have survived. Because that's what we do. You didn't break me. You sharpened me. She walked past the man without another word and pressed the override code. The screen lit up. Slave tracking stations across. Dozens of planets blinked out one by one. Chains shattered without lifting a single weapon. The data the Order had used to hunt and sell lives, gone. The man tried to reach for a hidden pistol, but Jake was faster. He stepped between them, disarmed him with one swift move, and threw the weapon to the floor. She's not yours to hurt. Anymore, he said, and just like that, it was over. The station fell. The Order cracked and across the stars, free beings watched the name Rin of Caltheron rise like fire across old maps, but she didn't return to power. She didn't build a palace. Instead, she returned to the slums, to the cold cities